Thank you for coming back. Once again, we're dealing with CPR. This is the online training of CPR and First Aid Training School. Where thank you so much for coming this far in our videos and learning something that could potentially save someone's life. So the first video we dealt with what is CPR, okay? And now we're moving into when do we do the CPR, okay? So just to reiterate what we were talking about, ultimately, we're going to be going over the same thing from 4 different angles. And it's going to all boil down to the heart, lungs, and brain, because those are the vital organs that sustain the brain in all actuality. So when do we do CPR? As you can see here, we do CPR when the person is not alive or what's called clinically dead. Okay. Now I know that's shocking to some. In all actuality, they aren't permanently dead, right? They're in a condition to where if we did no CPR from that moment forward, they would just remain in that condition, meaning their brain is off because of one reason and one reason only, and that is because it didn't get oxygenated blood. And so now it's shut off. This person is clinically dead. They're at a flat line if this was in the hospital and they had an EKG. And this is the moment, this is the opportunity that we have now to come in and do CPR. Most of you will be first responders in this situation. Maybe not so much of a paramedic or ER nurse or RN, registered nurse, maybe even a doctor. Most of you taking CPR and first aid will be first responders. So we need to demystify when to do CPR. This is one of the most important points of this class, understanding beyond a shadow of a doubt when to do this CPR, okay? So with that being said, we do CPR when the person is dead. But the question we should ask ourselves is, how do I know if someone is dead? Okay, so guess what? We're going to check those 3 organs once again: the heart, the lungs, and the brain. Okay, so first off, we're going to check the brain. Okay, we're going to check for responsiveness. Okay, the first thing we would do is we will come up to the victim, we would tap them and shout them on the shoulder, and we would see if we get any response. Even before that, we can just yell loudly. If they respond whatsoever, this person is not dead. They do not need CPR. They may need some version of first aid. If they're bleeding, maybe we should stop the bleeding. If they're choking, maybe we can do abdominal thrust. If someone is responding in some form or fashion, movement, talking, anything, looking at you, that is a telltale sign that their brain is functioning. They are not dead. Thus, CPR is not the solution in this particular situation. Maybe first aid could be, okay? Now, if they don't respond, does that mean they're dead? No, it does not. Okay, just because you're unresponsive, that does not mean you're dead. You can be in a diabetic coma. You could have blunt force trauma to the head. There's a number of things that could be at play in this particular situation that's not dead. The way we know if somebody is completely dead, that is the requirement for us to get started with CPR, is that there has to be no breathing and no pulse in conjunction with unresponsiveness. So let's talk about no breathing. How are we going to check for breathing? Well, in CPR First Aid Training School, we teach the look, listen, and feel. Okay, we're going to look at the rise and fall of the chest. We're going to listen to oxygen coming out the nose and mouth, and we're going to also feel for oxygen coming out the mouth simultaneously. If you feel oxygen coming out, if you see the rise and fall of the chest, this organ, the lungs, is controlled by the brain through the nervous system. This person is not dead. But if you don't see breathing, then that's a telltale sign they are, because there's no way you can live without breathing. Let's move to the next thing, pulse. Okay, so the pulse is a heartbeat. We check it right here on the carotid artery, right? On the other side of the trachea, below the jawbone, right here. You're going to put 2 fingers and you're going to feel for a beat. Okay. Try that out on friends and family. Try it out on yourself. You don't want it to be a life or death situation the first time you ever did this. Okay. But if you do find that hard, make sure you rely on that breathing, because no breathing could conclude that this person is going to become dead, or, quickly they are already dead in the first place. So remember, they work hand in hand. The main function of the blood is to transport the oxygen. So if there's no oxygen at all, then what's the purpose of the blood? Okay. So you really can't have one without the other. So if it gets confusing and you don't know if you feel a pulse or not, and you don't feel any breathing, let's get started with CPR, because chances are this person is dead. Okay. So we do CPR when the person is dead, but I did say they were clinically dead. Okay. There's a difference. There's also something called biologically dead. Okay. And the difference is a 10-minute window of time after their brain has shut off due to lack of oxygenated blood going to the brain. So at the moment when a person's brain shuts off and they are unresponsive, laid out on the ground or the bed, whatever the case may be, from that moment, we have an approximate 10-minute window of time to get started with CPR. Okay. If we do not get started with CPR within that 10-minute window of time, there'll be an increasing level of brain damage until the person goes brain dead or biologically dead. And that's the dead that we all think about. Okay. So to reiterate what we discussed before in what CPR is, CPR, we do it when the person is dead, right? And we know the person is dead because they'll be unresponsive with no breathing and no pulse. But we only have 10 minutes to get started, okay? It's not 10 minutes to do it completely. It's not 10 minutes and then you just stop. For a lot of first responders, we're going to do the CPR all the way until the paramedic literally takes over for us, almost like it's a relay race. You're not going to stop until the ambulance, the EMTs, whoever's taking over literally takes over for you, or they come alive, because that's a possibility as well. But just keep in mind, we have 10 minutes of time to get started. Otherwise, it will go completely brain dead. And the quicker we do the CPR and the more effective is going to give the victim the best quality of life after being revived. Okay. So we do the CPR when the person is dead. They're not completely biologically dead. They're just in a state to where they can still be revived. We have to get started as quickly as possible. Every second we don't get started, increasing level of brain damage. So what that means is if we save somebody at 8 minutes, it's going to be a big difference from us saving them at 2 minutes. Okay. So we want to get started with this CPR as quickly as possible to give the victim the best quality of life. And we'll get into how we do it in just a moment. Okay. Thank you so much for online training, checking out our videos.